The departure board flickered to boarding now at 6:47 a.m., and my mother's face went from entitled smugness to pure panic in exactly 3 seconds. She was standing there in Terminal 3 of LAX with my father, my sister Jessica, her husband Brad, and their 2 kids, all holding boarding passes I'd paid for, all expecting me to hand over my credit card one more time. But here's the thing about that moment. The worst part wasn't watching my mother's designer luggage sitting there unpaid for. It was realizing that in my family's eyes, I had never been a daughter. I'd been an ATM with a heartbeat. Let me back up 6 weeks to where this really started, though honestly, the pattern had been there my whole life. I was sitting in my home office in Marina del Rey, the 1-bedroom apartment I'd worked 70-hour weeks to afford, when my phone buzzed. Mum's contact photo smiled up at me, that same performative warmth she'd perfected over the years. "Sarah, honey, I have the most wonderful news." I should have known from that tone. That specific frequency of excitement that only emerged when she wanted something. The whole family is going to Turks and Caicos, 2 weeks at the beaches resort. Jessica found this amazing deal, and we've all been so stressed, and it's going to be our first real family vacation in 5 years. I remember the palm tree outside my window was swaying in the breeze, such a peaceful moment before everything shifted. "That sounds amazing, Mum. You guys deserve a break." The pause lasted 3 seconds too long. "Well, obviously we'll need help with the costs. Jessica and Brad have the kids' expenses. You know how tight things are for them. And Dad's retirement fund took that hit last year. But you're doing so well with that finance job." That finance job was a senior analyst position at a venture capital firm that I'd clawed my way into after 6 years of 80-hour weeks, 2 master's degrees I'd paid for myself, and more networking events than I could count. My salary was $180,000 a year. Good money, yes, but I was still paying off $90,000 in student loans because my parents had refused to co-sign anything, saying I needed to learn responsibility. Jessica had gotten a fully paid state school education because she'd gotten pregnant at 19, and they'd felt sorry for her. "How much are we talking about?" I asked, already feeling that familiar knot forming in my stomach. "Well, the resort package is $8,500 per couple, and for the kids it's $3,200 each, so that's $14,900 for Jessica's family. Then $8,500 for me and your father. The flights are about $600 each, so that's $4,800 for all 8 of us. Then there's the excursions. We want to do the snorkeling trip and the sunset cruise, and obviously meals beyond the resort and spending money." She was talking so fast, each number stabbing like a little knife. "Mom, that's over $30,000. "Is it? I didn't add it up. But Sarah, you make more than all of us combined. This is what family does. We support each other." I want you to understand something about financial abuse within families, because I didn't have words for it until my best friend Keisha spelled it out for me over Thai food 3 days later. "Sarah, listen to yourself," she said, setting down her pad thai. "In the last year alone, you've given your parents $4,000 for their emergency roof repair that turned into a kitchen renovation. You paid for Jessica's minivan down payment, $6,500. You've been covering your dad's temporary phone bill for 8 months. That's another $960. You sent $2,000 for your nephew's medical bills that turned out to be for Jessica's Botox." She had been keeping track of her phone. I watched her scroll through our text conversations every time I'd vented about another request. That's $13,460 in 11 months, not counting birthday gifts, Christmas, that loan to your parents you know you're never getting back. "Sarah, when was the last time they asked how you were doing? Not your job, not your money. You. I sat there in that restaurant booth, the smell of basil and lemongrass suddenly making me nauseous, and I couldn't remember. I genuinely could not remember a single conversation in the past year where my mother had asked about my life beyond my earning potential. They don't see you as a person, Keisha continued, her voice gentle but firm. You're a resource, and the worst part? You've been trained since childhood to think this is normal. She was right. I remembered being 12, asking my parents for a new winter coat because mine was too small and had a broken zipper. My mother had sighed, that specific sigh I'd learned to dread, and said, "We can't afford it right now, Sarah. Maybe if you got better grades and made us proud, good things would come to you." Meanwhile, Jessica had gotten a $300 homecoming dress that same month. When I was 16 and wanted to join the school robotics team, the $150 fee was too expensive and probably a waste since you're not even that good at math. Jessica's cheerleading, $400 per season plus uniforms, competitions and travel, was an investment in her future. The pattern was so clear now, I couldn't believe I'd never seen it. I spent that night doing something I'd never done before. I made a spreadsheet. Every dollar I'd given my family in the past 5 years. Bank statements don't lie, and I had kept meticulous records because of my finance background. The total was $67,340. I'm going to let that number sit with you for a moment, the same way it sat with me at 2:30 a.m. in my apartment, the glow of my laptop screen, the only light, traffic sounds from PCH drifting through the window. $67,340. None of it was repaid. None of it even acknowledged beyond the immediate, "Thanks, you're such a lifesaver," before the next request came. Meanwhile, Jessica, who constantly posted on Facebook about being a blessed mama, with photos of Starbucks runs, nail appointments and Target hauls, had never once offered to pay for dinner when we met. Not once in 5 years, because things are so tight with the kids. Even though both she and Brad worked full-time and lived in a house my parents had helped them with the down payment for, a down payment they'd never offered me. At 3:15 a.m., I texted my mother, "I need to think about the vacation costs. Can we talk this weekend?" Her response came at 6:02 a.m. "Don't overthink this, honey. Family first. Jessica is already so excited, and the kids keep asking if Auntie Sarah is going to take them to the water park at the resort. You wouldn't want to disappoint them, would you?" That last line. The manipulation was so transparent it almost made me laugh. Almost. I drove to my parents' house that Saturday. They lived in a 4-bedroom in Pasadena, the same house I'd grown up in, worth about $1.2 million now thanks to California real estate. They'd nearly paid off the mortgage, both had decent retirement accounts, and took at least 2 vacations a year. Jessica's minivan was in the driveway. Of course it was. United front. My mother opened the door in full makeup and a white linen outfit that screamed, "Innocent mother who only wants family togetherness." My father was in his recliner, barely looking up from his iPad. Jessica sat on the couch, her kids mysteriously absent, probably sent to play upstairs so the adults could talk. "Before you say anything," Mum started, already defensive, "I want you to know how hurtful it was that you didn't immediately agree to this." Jessica was so upset she actually cried. Cried, Sarah, because her sister apparently doesn't value family time. Jessica's eyes were perfectly dry, but she nodded sadly. I'd prepared a whole speech. I'd practiced it with Keisha, written bullet points, rehearsed in my car. But standing there in that living room that suddenly felt foreign and hostile, different words came out. How much money have I given this family in the past 5 years? My mother blinked. What? That's not the point. We're talking about a family vacation. 67,340, I said clearly. I calculated it. Every emergency, every favor, every temporary help that became permanent, that's the actual number. That's ridiculous, my father said, finally looking up. It hasn't been that much. I pulled out my phone, opened the spreadsheet I'd emailed myself. Would you like to see the breakdown? February 2020, $4,200 for the roof. July 2020, $1,500 for Dad's dental work. November 2020, $2,800 for… Stop it, my mother snapped. You sound like an accountant. This is family, not a business transaction. You're absolutely right, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Family isn't a business, so why am I the only one making deposits and never getting anything back? Jessica scoffed. Actually scoffed. Oh, here we go. Poor Sarah, so oppressed. You make 6 figures and you can't help your family without throwing it in our faces. Have you ever offered to pay me back? Any of you? $1? The silence was deafening. That's what I thought, I continued. So here's what's going to happen. I'm not paying for this vacation. I'm not paying for any more emergencies, upgrades, luxuries, or conveniences. I'm done being an ATM. My mother's face transformed into something I'd never quite seen before. Pure, unfiltered rage mixed with panic. You ungrateful, selfish girl, she hissed. After everything we've done for you, we raised you, fed you, put a roof over your head. That's called being a parent, I interrupted. That's the legal minimum requirement. You don't get unlimited financial compensation for 18 years of basic care. We sent you to college. I paid for college, every cent. You refused to co-sign loans, remember? Said I needed to learn responsibility. Meanwhile, you paid for Jessica's entire state school education. Jessica stood up. That's because I had a baby. I needed help. You were 19 and made a choice. I respect that choice, but it doesn't obligate me to fund your life forever. How dare you? My mother breathed. How dare you throw your money in our faces like this? We've been nothing but loving and supportive. When? I heard my voice rise, felt years of suppressed frustration erupting. Name one time in the past 5 years you called to ask how I was doing. Not my job, not whether I could help with something. Actually asked about my life, my feelings, my struggles. One time, Mum. Just one. She opened her mouth, closed it, looked at my father, who suddenly became very interested in his iPad again. That's what I thought, I said quietly. I need to go. If you walk out that door without agreeing to help with this vacation, my mother said, her voice ice cold, you are choosing to break this family apart. That will be on you. When your nephews ask why Auntie Sarah doesn't love them anymore, when your father and I tell people our daughter abandoned us, when Jessica's kids grow up without knowing their aunt, that's your choice. The emotional manipulation was so textbook, so obvious, it almost amazed me that it had worked for so long. Goodbye, Mum. I made it to my car before I started shaking. The next 2 weeks was psychological warfare. Text messages came hourly, photos of my nephews with captions like, "They keep asking if Auntie Sarah is coming to the beach with us," and "Guess we'll have to tell them some people value money more than family." My father called once, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Your mother is heartbroken, Sarah. She's barely eating. Is this really the hill you want to die on? It's just money. You make plenty of it. Just money. As if my entire existence to them wasn't reduced to exactly that." Jessica sent a long email detailing every way I was destroying the family, how selfish and cold I'd become, how success had changed me into someone unrecognizable. The old Sarah would never have been this cruel, she wrote. Money has poisoned you. The old Sarah had been a doormat. She was right about that changing. My mother's voicemails became increasingly desperate and manipulative. I'm sorry if we made you feel used, honey. That was never our intention. We just need this one last thing, and then we'll never ask again. Please, Sarah, please don't punish the children for whatever you think we did wrong. One last thing. The same phrase she'd used before the roof, before the minivan, before every single request. I blocked them all for 48 hours just to breathe. Keisha came over with wine and takeout. How are you holding up? I feel like the worst person alive, I admitted. What if they're right? What if I'm being selfish? Let me ask you something, she said. If the roles were reversed, if you'd lost your job, couldn't make rent, actually needed help, do you think they would give you $30,000? Or even $3,000? I thought about it honestly, about every time I'd struggled with student loans, about the year I'd had $400 in my bank account and survived on ramen, about when I'd had the flu so badly I couldn't drive and had asked my mother to bring soup and she'd said she was too busy with Jessica's baby shower planning. No, I whispered, they wouldn't. That's not family, Sarah. That's extraction. 3 days before the scheduled departure, my mother called from a number I hadn't blocked, my aunt's phone. Sarah, please, we've already booked everything. We can't afford this without you. We'll be stuck with cancellation fees, lost deposits. We could lose thousands of dollars. You could lose money you don't have because you booked an expensive vacation you couldn't afford, expecting me to pay for it. We just thought, you always help, your family. Did you actually book the flights already? A pause. Some of them. How many? We were waiting to book most of them until you confirmed. So they hadn't fully committed, which meant the lost deposits were minimal, another manipulation. I'm not paying, Mum. My answer is final. Then we're going anyway, she said, her voice turning hard. Jessica found cheap flights. We're leaving Thursday morning, 6:30 a.m. flight from LAX. We'll make it work without you, and we'll have a wonderful time, and you can live with knowing you chose money over family memories. Have a great trip, I said and hung up. I should have let it go. I should have moved on with my life, gone to work, focused on my own healing. But something Keisha had said kept nagging at me. The only way they'll learn is if they face actual consequences. Tuesday afternoon, I did something impulsive, possibly petty, but ultimately necessary for my own closure. I called the resort in Turks and Caicos, asked if there were any reservations under my mother's name. There weren't. Ask about Jessica's name. Nothing. Out of curiosity, I checked the credit card I'd foolishly added to my mother's Amazon account 2 years ago for emergencies. There were charges from Monday, $4,800 to a travel website. They'd bought the flights using my card. Not their cards, not their money, my card, without asking. That's when I made the call to my credit card company and reported the charges as unauthorized. Thursday morning, I woke up at 5 a.m. I told myself I wasn't going to the airport. I was just going for a drive. I needed to clear my head. The fact that I drove toward LAX was coincidental. The fact that I parked in the short-term lot at 6:15 a.m. was just thorough coincidence. I stood in Terminal 3, near the Alaska Airlines check-in area, partially hidden behind a pillar like some kind of stalker. But I needed to see this. Needed to witness what would happen when people finally faced consequences for their actions. They arrived at 6:25 a.m., cutting it close for a 6:30 flight, which tracked with their general lack of planning skills. Mum and Dad with 3 large suitcases each, for a beach resort with laundry facilities. Jessica, Brad, and the kids with even more luggage, including what looked like the kids' entire toy collection. They looked stressed but excited. My mother was already on her phone, probably trying to call me one last time to guilt me into meeting them there with my wallet open. I watched them approach the ticket counter, watched the agent's increasingly concerned face as she typed. I watched my mother's expression shift from confident to confused to panicked. I couldn't hear the exact words, but I saw payment issue and contact your bank in the agent's gestures. My mother was on her phone immediately. I could imagine her checking the credit card app, seeing the declined charge and the fraud report notification. She looked around the terminal wildly, and for one heart-stopping second, I thought she saw me. But she was looking for solutions, not witnesses. Jessica was crying. Actual crying this time, not performance tears. Brad looked frustrated, checking his own wallet, probably realizing their own cards couldn't cover 8 last-minute flight tickets that would now cost 3 times the original price. My nephews, confused and tired, kept asking what was wrong. Why weren't they going to the beach? I should have felt triumphant, or at least vindicated. Instead, I felt nothing but exhausted sadness as I watched the family I'd tried so hard to please for 32 years fall apart over money they'd expected to extract from me without even asking. My phone buzzed. 17 missed calls, 23 texts, the most recent from my mother. What did you do? The charges were declined. Sarah, call me right now. We're at the airport. Fix this. Not, I'm sorry we used your card without permission. Not, we need to talk about why this happened. Just, fix this. One more demand in an endless string of demands. I watched them gather their absurd amount of luggage and start the walk of shame toward the exit, and I finally let myself leave my hiding spot. I didn't confront them. I didn't reveal myself. I just walked to my car and drove home. The nuclear fallout lasted 3 weeks. My mother left voicemails that escalated from fury to grief to manipulation. You deliberately sabotaged our vacation. You stole from us. That money was meant for the family trip. She actually said I stole from them, despite them literally using my card without permission. Your father's blood pressure is through the roof because of your cruelty. Jessica's children cried for 2 days. 2 days, Sarah. You traumatized your own nephews. I don't even know who you are anymore. The daughter I raised would never be this vindictive. That last one almost made me laugh. She was right. The daughter she'd raised to be a compliant ATM would never have done this. But I wasn't that person anymore. Jessica sent an email with the subject line, "You owe us," detailing the damages I'd caused, $600 in cancellation fees they'd actually incurred, plus $5,000 in emotional distress compensation for the kids, plus $2,000 for the therapy they'll now need because of the trauma. $7,600. They wanted me to pay them for the consequences of their own actions. I didn't respond to any of it. What I did do was something Keisha suggested. I wrote a letter. Not to send, just for myself. Every feeling, every memory, every moment of manipulation. 10 pages of single-spaced honesty about what it felt like to be valued only for my earning potential. To be the family emergency fund, but never the family priority. Then I wrote a second letter. This one I actually sent. Certified mail, so there was no "we never got it" excuse. It was short. To my family, I did not steal from you. You used my credit card without permission, which is fraud. I reported it as such. I am not paying for vacations, emergencies, conveniences, or lifestyle upgrades anymore. This is not negotiable and not a discussion. If you want a relationship with me that doesn't involve money, I'm open to that. But it will require acknowledgement of the pattern, genuine apologies, and demonstrated change over time. If you only want a relationship with my bank account, then we have nothing further to discuss. Sarah. The response came from my father, surprisingly, a 2-line text. Your mother is devastated. Hope you're happy. Not an apology, not an acknowledgement, just more blame. I blocked all their numbers, social media, email addresses, everything. It's been 8 months now since the airport incident. I'm sitting in my apartment, a new 2-bedroom I just moved into because I can actually afford it now that I'm not funding an entire extended family's lifestyle. There's art on the walls that I chose, furniture I picked out, a savings account that's growing instead of being constantly drained. I started therapy. Turns out 3 decades of financial abuse and emotional manipulation leave some scars that need professional help to heal. My therapist has a term for what my family did: financial enmeshment with parentification. Basically, they made me the parent, the provider, while still treating me like a child they could control. Some days are hard. I miss the fantasy of what I thought we were. But I don't miss the reality of what we actually were. 3 months ago, my aunt, my mother's sister, reached out. She'd heard some version of what happened and wanted my side. I met her for coffee, skeptical, guarded. I've watched your mother do this to you for years, she said quietly. I tried to say something once, and she didn't speak to me for 6 months. I'm ashamed I didn't try harder. It wasn't an apology from my mother, but it was validation from someone who'd witnessed it. That mattered more than I expected. Last week I got a letter in the mail, my father's handwriting. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won. It was 3 pages long. No apology, but something closer to acknowledgement than I'd ever gotten. Recognition that perhaps we relied on you too much financially, that your mother has difficulty seeing other perspectives, that maybe we could have been more appreciative. It was the emotional equivalent of crumbs, but from a man who'd never admitted fault in his life, it was something. The letter ended with, "If you ever want to talk, I'll listen." I haven't responded yet. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. The difference now is that it's my choice, on my terms, if and when I'm ready. Jessica sent a friend request on Instagram 2 days ago. No message, just the request. I let it sit there. I'm not angry anymore, but I'm also not ready. Maybe I never will be, and that's okay too. Here's what I want you to understand if you're in a similar situation. Financial abuse in families is real, insidious, and often invisible because it's wrapped in the language of love and obligation. Family helps family is true, but help is mutual, respectful, and doesn't leave one person depleted while everyone else benefits. Blood is thicker than water is actually a misquote. The full phrase is, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb, meaning the bonds we choose can be stronger than the bonds we're born into. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm, even if those others are family, especially if those others are family who only see you as fuel. I still struggle with guilt sometimes, still have days where I wonder if I was too harsh, too cold, too final. But then I look at my savings account, at the vacation to Japan I'm planning for myself, at the peace I feel when my phone buzzes, and it's not another demand disguised as a family emergency, and I know I made the right choice. The woman who would have handed over $30,000 without question, who would have apologized for not being able to give more, who would have sacrificed her own financial security to maintain family peace, she's gone. In her place is someone who understands her worth isn't measured in dollars given, but in boundaries maintained. Someone who knows that the most loving thing you can do sometimes is refuse to enable. Someone who chose herself, finally, after 32 years of choosing everyone else. Was it worth leaving them at the airport? Worth the nuclear fallout, the guilt trips, the shattered family facade? I look around my apartment, at the life I'm building on my own terms, and I think, absolutely. My family expected me to pay for their vacation because I make more money. I left them at the airport because I finally learned that I'm worth more than what I can provide. And if you're in this situation, listening to this story and seeing yourself in it, so are you. You are worth more than your earning potential, more than your ability to solve other people's problems, more than the role they've assigned you. Setting boundaries isn't cruel, it's self-preservation. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can say to people who only value you for what you give is simply, no more.